Get your news in an easier, more efficient way this new year. The Newsworthy breaks down the day's top stories in less than 15 minutes and gives you some lighter conversation starters. It's quick, friendly, and informative. Search The Newsworthy wherever you're listening now and follow or subscribe to The Newsworthy today.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
He's Derek.
I can hear the bells. Shame. Shame.
She's Romaine.
This is what happens with DNR 2.0. You get a much more interactive Romaine. Put out the singers. Sing, sing, sing.
This is Derek and Romaine.
2.0, bitches. That's right, Derek. Hello, hello, hello. How's it going?
I can't wait to hear all of your zingers today.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm sure they'll be great.
Well, hello, Hags. I'm so glad it's whatever day of the week it is. We are not live, but we are alive.
Are we? I don't know. Some days,
honestly,
I don't know.
You know what? Actually, I've thought about this. This is kind of morbid, but we pre-record shows sometimes because we have cruises coming up or the holidays or, whatever other reasons that we might not be able to be live. Sometimes we just have some extras in case there's a weather event and power goes out or whatever. We want to have episodes in the bank. So we do bank these episodes, but I do wonder, if one of us died, suddenly, it's we would have these unaired episodes. I guess, we'd probably air them, right? It would be a little weird and morbid if we were already dead and then people were tuning in as if we were still alive. So anyway.
What would we do? That is a weird thought I'd never thought of.
I think about these kinds of things.
Because, this shit could happen. We are of the age where we could just drop dead any day now.
Speak for yourself, sweetie. I
am speaking for myself, Derek. The reality is, I know people my age who drop dead all the time.
Look,
I've had a woman from the farm who is 12 years younger than me just died suddenly. Just dropped dead. Brain aneurysm. Boom. Dead. 35.
Well, that is not a good age to drop dead.
No. You just never know, Derek. You just never know. So I don't know what we would do. I guess we'd play them. I don't know.
Although I do know there are a handful of people out there who would love it if you or I or both of us drop dead.
Well, that's horrible.
I think we know it's not a long list of people. It's probably not more than 4 or 5.
There are a handful of people who hate us that much. That's probably true.
They would dance a little bit of a jig on our graves.
Oh, I'm
but you know what?
certain of that.
I only care about outliving my haters and my mother and no one else.
Yeah, that's fair.
So anyway, suck it, haters. We're probably still alive.
Most likely.
Mostly. Anyway, not a guarantee here on Derek and Romaine.
Nothing in life is a guarantee,
No,
Derek.
Nothing in life is guaranteed. I have had friends who died young, so quite unexpectedly. And so, sometimes it just happens that way.
Yeah. Sure does. Wow, what a way to start a best of show. We're dead.
I agree.
No, kidding, we're not.
All right. But actually,
oh God, that's so funny.
Speaking of people who are maybe alive or not alive, Schrodinger's Derek and Romaine.
Mm-hmm.
I actually recently I was reading this article in the New York Times Magazine about Sacagawea.
Okay.
Now, people may not realize this when they're growing up, but when they become adults, they realize that you get different history based on the state that you live in.
Absolutely.
What gets prioritized in your history classes. And so, for me, growing up in California, we would get quite an extensive history of the gold rush and Sutter's Mill and all that kind of stuff, which was obviously extremely, I mean, it was important in the U.S., you know, but I probably got more information on that than most people in the country did as part of just like general history, right?
For me, it was the Battle of the Little Bighorn, also known as Custer's Last Stand.
Right.
That was what I got a lot of extra education on because it happened very close to where I grew up.
Okay, see, so there you go. So people, depending on where they grew up, may or may not have gotten quite a bit of information about the Lewis and Clark expedition and Sacagawea. Like, did you get, because like Lewis and Clark sort of passed by your area.
Yeah, so I remember learning about her briefly, but I can't remember what she's well known for.
Okay, well, so I was reading this, there's a book out called Eagle Woman, which is about the history of Sacagawea. Her native name was interpreted in her life as Bird Woman.
Okay.
But native speakers of her language have interpreted Sacagawea as Eagle Woman, which is, you know, a little more flattering than Bird Woman.
Yes.
Because Bird Woman is that lady who feeds the birds tuppence a bag in Mary Poppins. Not a flattering portrayal. Anyway.
Right.
So as people know from the American history, that Lewis and Clark were hired by Thomas Jefferson to explore the Louisiana Purchase. You know, they got the Louisiana Purchase, and then they're like, well, we should probably send somebody out to actually see what it is that we got for 10 cents on the dollar here. And so Lewis and Clark go on this expedition, and as they're about to leave, there's a French trapper. I think his name is Charbonneau. Anyway, he says, hey, look, you guys are about to go on this expedition. My wife is Native American, and we can go with you, and we can translate when you go along the way. Because Lewis and Clark did not speak any native languages. We're not familiar with the area. So it's like, you know, my wife had been, when she was a kid, she was Shoshone, and then she was kidnapped by this other tribe. And so she knows all the Shoshone people who are, you know, part of the Louisiana Purchase, and she can help translate along the way. So people growing up know the story of Sacagawea. She had just given birth. So they have all these men who are, I think there were like 40 people in the expedition, all men. And then Sacagawea, this teenage girl with a baby who is like traveling, you know, across the upper Pacific Northwest. And anyway, so not a lot was known about her except that she was this sort of Native American guide who helped Lewis and Clark as they went on their journey. But a lot of what is known about her, because like a lot of sort of women in history, and especially like a Native woman in history, like what little we know about her and her life was told by the white men around her. Right. And so, you know, and as these kinds of things go, like with Lewis and Clark, like a lot of stuff just sort of falls into the legend, right? Mm-hmm. You know, here they are, they're, you know, because even when you think about Lewis and Clark, you don't think about the fact that there were 40 people on that expedition. You think of it almost, you know, in your head as these two guys and this Native American woman and her baby, and then they just walked on foot like 1,000 miles, like insane. Anyway, so, but this native tribe that she was from, they have felt for a long time that the history of Sacagawea was wrong. And that what we know about her is false. Oh. And that even though it was recorded sort of contemporaneously that she died in 1812, her native tribe insists, nope, she lived until 1869 and was shot.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's quite a difference.
It is quite a difference. So what was fascinating about this, and the book is called Eagle Woman, and basically the tribe set out to do like an extremely scholarly research of the sort of Native American oral histories, but also to try to back it up with other histories of the period and see if they could piece together her life, because a lot of the previous research on Sacagawea, they didn't bother looking past 1812 because she was assumed to be dead at that point. And so no other research was done into what the rest of her life might have been. But according to this book, she had 3 other kids.
Wow.
And lived a whole life. And the thing was that the fur trapper trader that she was married to had 2 other wives.
Oh.
So they believe that it was another one of his wives that died in 1812 and that it was misidentified as Sacagawea. Anyway, so it's this whole thing. But now there's this fight among scholars who don't want to believe this Native American interpretation of Sacagawea's life.
Why?
Because this same thing happened with Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. That for years, historians, because Thomas Jefferson never in his many writings, and he wrote quite extensively, obviously, never wrote about Sally Hemings. And so they just were like, well, you're just creating this fiction and fantasy about him being in this relationship with Sally Hemings. She just happened to be around. And he never fathered any of her children. And so historians, literally until DNA came around, absolutely refused to believe that Thomas Jefferson had fathered any of Sally Hemings' children.
Wow.
So it really wasn't until the mid-90s that finally historians came around. And now, of course, we have all this DNA evidence, and they've had to change all of this stuff at Monticello because it's so obvious. And by the way, it was so obvious to any number of other people who knew about slave history and everything.
Right.
Of she wasn't just I don't know, some slave handmaid who was just had a room off of his bedroom in case he needed something in the middle of the night. Everyone else was like, this is obvious what's happening. He took her to Paris because they were boning, not because he needed somebody to brush his hair, for fuck's sake. Anyway, but historians often see what they want to see.
Right.
And definitely there was for a long time, in the sort of retelling of slavery, there was never a lot of discussion about slave owners sexually assaulting the women that they had enslaved. But this was obviously going on quite extensively.
Yes.
And, and certainly census records of the mid-19th century, and this is an old term I'm going to use here, so trigger warning, whatever, but many people in the mid to late 20th century in identifying their race in the census listed themselves as mulatto, which was was an old term for somebody who was mixed race.
Right.
And there are thousands of people who identify that way in the record, lots and lots and lots of people. And so the idea that somehow this wasn't going on, is, the contemporaneous records make it obviously clear. Anyway, so I think a similar thing happened here with Sacagawea, that the historians wanted to believe the cute fiction of, this nice girl who didn't really, who helped to guide them and, joined these men in their expedition and everything, and then died soon afterward, and therefore end of story. No, nothing else to her story or who
nothing
she is
else to see
or where
here.
she came from. Right, nothing else to see here. But so I'm reading in the thing though all about the research that they did, and of course I get to the part where they're and we had everybody take DNA tests because there was a man that was interviewed 100 years ago. His name was Bullseye, and he claimed to be Sacagawea's grandson.
Okay.
And he was interviewed by a historian professor in Montana in 1923. And it was a guy who tried to collect stories from Native Americans in the area because, they were old and dying off, and that part of history was dying off. And so much of Native American history was an oral history tradition. It wasn't written down. And so this guy just went around with a pencil and a legal pad and would go around and interview elders in tribal villages and get their stories about, the West and what happened. Anyway, so he interviewed this guy along with the tribal elders who were there to basically if he said something that they didn't think was true, they would like say, no, that's not exactly how that happened. Like, because everybody would have their own sort of oral tradition, so they tried to like get it down as accurately as possible. And he tried to get it published and everything in the time period, but people were like, nope, she definitely died in 1812. This is a fake story, and they refused to believe it. So anyway, but they have this story about him going with his mother and grandmother, who was Sacagawea, his grandmother, and they were going to like a trading post in 1869, and another native tribe attacked them and shot his mother and grandmother, and he was 4 years old. They were like hiding under a wagon, and his mother and grandmother were shot, and his mother died like with him in her arms, and then his grandmother died from her wounds like 2 days later at the fort. And so they were like, well, he was 4. What could he really remember? I think if your mother was shot in front of you when you're 4 years old,
probably.
It's the kind of thing you're not going to forget. Just because, like I have talked about that we moved from Utah to California when I was around 4, right? And that's not a great age to remember a lot of things, but I remember it for 2 reasons. One, because it was a very specific activity that happened around it, but also I have retold what I remember. Like I have reinforced it over time because I have remembered and re-remembered and told it and whatever. And so what I remember of the period is not everything, but what I remember is very distinct because it has constantly lived. And I would imagine in a situation like this, if you know your grandmother was Sacagawea and she was shot in front of you when you were 4 and your mother died right in front of you, it's the kind of story you would have told many times and you would remember because you remembered it at the time, but also in the many, many retellings of it, right?
Right.
So I find discounting the memory of a 4-year-old in this case to be a suspect reason to not agree with his memory, because a lot of people who have trauma at a young age, in the like 4 to 6 range, very distinctly remember that trauma.
Right.
Because of course it's going to stick with you for a
Yeah,
while.
I would think it would. I mean, that's a pretty traumatic thing. Yeah, it's not like it's a small event.
Right. So of course they did DNA tests with his descendants, and they lined up with the descendants of Sacagawea through her the kid that she had with her husband, the French whatever trapper. So like
that lends a lot of credibility to this guy's claim.
Yeah, they have pretty definitive DNA evidence here to back up the situation. And to me, I just feel like, because I do a lot of genealogy research, and I really was sort of like reading this New York Times Magazine article really from the standpoint of my own genealogy research, because sometimes you come across things that don't fit neatly into a narrative. Sometimes people make choices in life that don't make a lot of sense out of the context of the time period, right?
Sure.
And you just sort of have to let what you find be what you found. And, you can, you just sort of, you have to accept what you found as sort of at face value and try not to just ignore the things that are like don't fit into what you were hoping to find. Like you just, what you find is what you find. And then you have to present what you found as it is. And usually what happens if, like with everyone's life, a sort of relatively consistent but messy portrait, appears.
Yes.
And so so this is really what happened here. And so they're trying to get the Park Service to update the information that they have that says that she didn't die in 1812. And, but there are a lot of historians who are like, nope, we should leave this exactly as it is.
But that's not historically accurate. So why would they want that?
Well, this happens a lot. Like once history has been sort of, frozen in amber, people don't want anything that changes the narrative as it is.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not accurate. So
right, and you're somebody who lived through a historical event, and so you've also seen, like with Matthew Shepard, one of the things that you've been very vocal about is portraying him as a full person,
right?
Not solely as sort of this
symbol,
narrow cast,
right?
Person, But you have seen for yourself how people just want the narrow cast. Like they don't want...
It's annoying.
Yeah. And you would imagine that 150 years later, 200 years later, people are like, the narrow cast is what we have. Nobody is alive now who knows. So why don't we just keep it as it is? And so there's just a lot of, pushback on revisiting.
But if you
these kinds of
have
things.
definitive proof,
Right.
then I feel like you can't stick with that because then it's a lie.
Yeah.
And it's like if you're documenting history, then you have to document it as it was, not as it may be more convenient to be.
But, and this brings me back to the thing with Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings.
Right.
Is that, yes, knowing that he wrote about freedom and, was president and, the Constitution and
Right.
the Declaration of Independence and all these things, like, knowing that he was, and it is hard to fully define the relationship with Sally Hemings. She did have an opportunity when she was in Paris to be free, and chose instead to go back to the United States, under the condition that her children would be free. Like whatever children she had would be free. And
Sacrifice your own freedom for your children? Oh, yeah, I can see how someone might do that.
Right. But also, we don't know what her feelings about Thomas Jefferson were.
Right. Did she like him? Did she hate him?
But also, she was, we talk a lot about consent. She wasn't really in a position to, consent or not consent
Right.
of her whole being.
Right.
And so even if she had a good life and, had whatever, good feelings she might have had about Thomas Jefferson, whatever, the reality is that she wasn't in a position to choose.
Right.
Even if ultimately her life might have been satisfactory, right? Like however we would want to interpret that as, her life wasn't that bad. And it is a real question of why did she not choose her own freedom in Paris? And we don't know. We'll never know. What was behind that choice. So anyway, but I think it makes the history of somebody like Thomas Jefferson more interesting.
Sure.
Because he wasn't just this, pure crusader for individual freedom.
But
Obviously,
who is?
he
I mean,
wasn't.
in all honesty,
Right.
who really is that good?
Right. But even still, it brings into stark relief these people who owned slaves who are also championing freedom, right? Like, okay, well, obviously, freedom, even to them, was an idea with parameters around it. Like,
Right. There
there were limitations to freedom. They didn't give women the right to vote or own property or any number of things, and, some of the women in that time period, Abigail Adams, were not amused by how they ended up with no rights at all.
Right.
And because they felt like, well, look, what is this fight for freedom? Oh, it's just for you. And so I think it gives us an opportunity to create a fuller portrait of people in a time period that is complicated because people are complicated. And I
They
know
sure
everyone
are.
likes things that are simple, but sometimes things are complicated. I also think that knowing more about Sacagawea as a person and other parts of her journey, even with Lewis and Clark, because apparently, so they hired this guy, right, the fur trader, who is going to help them out. And then once they get on the journey, this guy is useless.
Oh.
He barely speaks her language. And so even the interpreting is a hot mess. And then they got into a situation where they were crossing a river and the boat's capsized. And the fur trader is like, help, Lord, have mercy on me. Don't let me drown here, whatever. And Sacagawea, is rescuing their scientific equipment and their journals and supplies and everything from the sinking boat and getting it to shore. And then Lewis and Clark are like, he's a dud and she's the only one who has her act together. So their opinion of her changed a lot over the journey because
she was a badass and not everyone could meet up to her.
Yeah, that she was a lot more together and that he was boasting about how great he was. But it turns out she was significantly better. I think if they had had their druthers, they would have abandoned him at some point. Like if they had been able to just communicate directly with her, because apparently, they had a mess. Because they didn't speak French and he didn't speak English. So then they had another person who was there, a mixed race person who spoke French and English, because I think they were from like New Orleans, Louisiana. And so everything was a game of telephone.
Jesus.
They would meet some native person. She would communicate with them, tell her husband what they said. The husband would tell the person from New Orleans what she said. And then he would tell Lewis and Clark.
Oh,
and
God.
so this game of telephone everywhere.
Can you imagine
they went.
if anything? I mean, was anything even accurate with
Right.
what was communicated to them? Probably not.
Probably not. And that's
Through that many levels, Jesus Christ.
This is part of the argument of like how, even though they were making contemporaneous like notes in their journal,
Right.
the reality is how much information in this time period was actually accurate.
Right.
Because, other than the things that they observed sort of wordlessly, like her rescuing things from this overturned canoe, like everything else, like anything anyone said is going to be suspect.
Yeah. Sure is.
So anyway, I just found it interesting, especially from
That's
sort of a
interesting.
genealogy standpoint of, there's more to learn here. And Sacagawea is like on U.S. money. And
Yeah.
she is this sort of noted figure of like, she was so helpful in this time period with Lewis and Clark. And so we've mytholized this person.
Right.
And the thing that bothers me about not wanting to create a fuller picture of her is that none of it reflects badly on Lewis and Clark.
Right.
It's not like, they've uncovered this thing that turns out, racism or like nothing negative has come out of knowing more about her. We just have a better picture
the
of her.
reality is, Derek, and I hate to say this about our country and our history, is that women in our history are often not given credit or are forgotten because we don't want to hurt men's feelings, and so women do not get a lot of credit for the accomplishments that they have had. Like, I feel like, growing up, you didn't hear a lot about women in history in general. Like, you just didn't. Or if you did, in like the case of Sacagawea, you knew very little, or there was very little taught about her, just that, that she was important, but like not a lot. I mean, I'm trying to think historically who the most famous woman I learned about in history. And there's one name that immediately jumps out. But part of it was because I thought she was a badass and I was fascinated by her. And that would be Harriet Tubman. Like, I thought Harriet Tubman was the most, she might as well have been a superhero to me when I was growing up. And it wasn't like we learned a lot about her, but what I learned about her, I was like, holy shit, here's a woman who risked everything to help other people. And she was kind of this like badass warrior woman out there, doing all this great work. But I can't think of a lot of other women that I learned about in history, especially American women in particular. There just were not a lot of them that we learned about growing up.
I mean, like every once in a while, there would be a story about a woman in the Revolutionary War or the Civil War who dressed as a man. Mm-hmm. And it was only uncovered that she wasn't a man when she was injured.
Right.
Actually, one of them, I think, sued for like a pension.
Oh, wow.
Because she was injured. And so it's like, I deserve a disabled veteran's pension. And I think she got it, went to court. But even still, like, it was like, these women were just so patriotic that they really just wanted to help out. And there's never any sort of digging into, who were these women and what was really behind this. Like, maybe it was patriotism. Maybe it was like the life that they wanted to have, they weren't able to have as a woman. Maybe they were transgender in their time. Maybe they were just, women who wanted a different life, and the only way to have that life was to be a man. And, and sort of live that way. who knows? But the thing is that it's just treated as this like quirky novelty of history, and then nobody ever asks any follow-up questions about it, which I always found very irritating, because it's like, I don't know, you're teaching us all about this time period. These women are interesting. Like, what motivates somebody to make choices like this?
Right.
And risk their life, but also just like their physical safety, in order to, Mulan their way through American history. I don't know. So I find sometimes the way our history is taught to be disappointing, because I think that it could be taught in a way that is interesting and lively, and that is not negative. It's not like, I'm not really sure what the negative is of teaching more about these women who dress as men to fight in wars. Like, how is that? I don't understand how that is a negative in any way, except that it highlights how little power women had, that this was their only option for, engaging in this way. But didn't we already know women couldn't serve in the military then, and couldn't vote, and like all of these things? Like, this isn't a surprise. So I just don't understand it. I really, there are things like that I just I don't understand. But, I'm not in charge of teaching history. I'm not a historian. So what do I know about these choices that other people have made?
Yeah, I don't know. But it is interesting. Thank you for this little history lesson, Derek. That was very nice. I feel like I learned a little something about American history today.
That's right. Speaking of learning things,
yes.
You know that HBO is doing a Harry Potter series.
Yes, I am aware that there is a new series. Yes.
Yeah. So they keep posting these poor kids. Every time there's a casting notice of one of the kids that gets cast as one of the kids on Harry Potter, they post about the kid.
Yeah.
And it's some 8-year-old, 9-year-old. And most of them have no film credits whatsoever.
Right.
And then they're like, can you believe it? They cast so-and-so as such and such. And I'm like, you're just opening this kid up to criticism on the internet for no good reason. We don't know anything about them. They just aren't Daniel Radcliffe. So therefore...
Well, it's because Daniel Radcliffe is too old to play Harry Potter, as a child now.
Well, obviously, because he's,
But they basically cast a lookalike that looked just like him when he started playing Harry Potter.
Sure. But they cast him.
Which, of course, makes sense.
Because he looked like the, illustration.
Right.
Well, apparently HBO is building a school specifically for the kids that are cast in the show, because they expect that the filming of the TV series could last 8 to 10 years.
Wow.
And so these kids will probably be doing, because of the length of the filming, will almost certainly need to have regular schooling. So they basically will all be going to school together.
This makes sense. And I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, that HBO is going to want to push this filming schedule as quickly as possible, even though it may take that long, because kids age relatively quickly, as we saw with the movies. By the time the final movie was filmed, these kids were no longer kids. They were full-blown adults. So I feel like that makes a lot of sense. You have to... these kids are going to basically be living in this world. They're going to be studying in this world. This is going to be their whole world for the next 8 or 9 years. So that makes a lot of sense. If I was a parent and my kid was cast in this, because obviously it's a huge opportunity, right? To create something, to be a part of this universe that has been so profitable over the years and, could launch your kid into super fame. The thing is you want your child to have this opportunity, but not at the expense of an education or things like that. So I would think that building a special school for them with the right kind of teachers and things like that would be very, very important.
Yeah. And they're going to be together a long time. So I hope they get along.
Well, kids will be kids. Sometimes they're going to get along. Sometimes they're not going to get along. That's just the nature of the beast.
But they did that. MGM famously had a schoolhouse on the lot. When I worked on the lot, when it was Sony Pictures, it was the old MGM lot. And Lisa Henson, who was Jim Henson of Muppet fame's daughter, she became a movie and TV producer when she became an adult. And she had a production company, and her production company was, because they do these deals where you have a production company and your deal is with the studio, so you have production offices on the lot as part of your deal. And so her production company had a deal with Sony, and their offices on the lot were the MGM Schoolhouse.
Oh.
And a friend of mine worked for Lisa Henson. So I got to go over and like actually see the schoolhouse and like their offices. And they had set it up actually because she had a producing partner, was another woman. And they basically, because it was a classroom, like it was a big classroom. I think they had like, the teacher had like a little office or whatever, but she and her producing partner were like in the classroom, like in the main room together, like they shared an office basically, because they were business partners. So they're like, we only need this one office, and because we're doing everything together, like this will be fine. And it was actually very cute. Like it's a cute little building, but like Elizabeth Taylor went to school there and Judy Garland went to school there, like not at the same time because they were like of a different age, but like lots of the child actors in the MGM days, like they went to the schoolhouse when they weren't filming and went to school.
Right.
Some of them learned
of
something.
sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a lot of them would have preferred to have like a real education.
I mean, yes, but at least some education is better than no education.
Yes. But I think these Harry Potter kids are probably going to get like a legitimate education. Even though they're basically going to get just like Romaine Patterson, the one-room schoolhouse.
My schoolhouse had more than one room. Thank you very much.
2 rooms, 3 rooms and a bath?
No, we had a normal school. All the schools I went to were normal schools.
What is a normally sized school to you? Didn't your graduating class have 30 students in it?
33, yes.
Okay. So how many different classes were 33 students in?
I mean, in my high school, there were probably... Let me just count really quick. There were at least 8 classrooms in one hallway, probably equal as many in the other one, and then a couple other hallways. I would say there were probably, let's say, 15 classrooms in my high school.
But how many teachers did you have, like, in your senior year?
Well, I'm trying to think how many periods there were in a day. I would say probably 6 to 8.
So were all
Different
33 of you all going to the same classes, like from teacher to teacher?
Yeah,
Or did you have different
basically.
ones?
Yeah, like like let's say you were a senior, there was humanities. That
Right,
was taught
okay.
by Mrs. Scott. Every senior had to take that class.
Okay.
And she might have offered it in 2 different periods throughout the day. So like half the class might have gone to the morning class and half the class might have gone to the afternoon class. But our average class size, I want to say, was around between 15 and 20 kids. So yeah, so you basically, each kid, the senior class was split into 2 classes kind of. You picked either like a morning or an afternoon class, and you went to that.
God, that's a small class size. And then I
But
guess
there
the
weren't,
teachers
like,
must
for
have
instance-
taught.
For instance, like if you wanted to take Algebra 1, there weren't
Right.
6 choices with 3 different teachers. There was a teacher who taught Algebra 1 twice a day. And you went
And then I assume at other times of the day they taught something else, like geometry. or something,
yeah.
Right? Or,
Yeah.
Okay.
Because like Miss Crow, who was my favorite math teacher, she taught like geometry. She taught all the high level math, calculus, trig. I think she also taught algebra 1 and 2. She taught a lot of classes. You know, and each year you took like a different one. Like, you know, as freshmen you were in algebra 1. You know, sophomores were in algebra 2, so on and so forth.
Little Romaine on the prairie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But it was a pretty normal high school, I think. For the most part. I mean, there were different, like, science teachers. There were, like, with the big core classes where you had, like there were different math teachers, there were different science teachers. Like, there were more than one teacher that taught those subjects.
One flat earther?
No, well, no, but there was one old school science teacher who was horrible. Mr. Bailey. He was a perv.
Oh, no.
He was an old perv and he was a homophobe. He did not like that I was gay. He's the one who, when I had a study hall in his class, he was the teacher for the study hall. And one day I was in study hall and I didn't have any work to do. So I had pulled out a copy of The Advocate and I was reading it in study hall. And he confiscated it because he said it was porn. And the best part was, so I went down to the principal's office later the day to get my advocate back. And Bob Edwards was my principal. I fucking loved Bob. And so I said, Bob, can I have my magazine back? And he goes, well, Mr. Bailey brought it to me because it was porn. And I said, yeah, can you flip through that magazine really quick? And he starts flipping through it. And it's like, pictures of hot guys in their like Speedos. And I'm like, exactly what in there is porn for me? And he started laughing. And he goes, well, there's an awful lot of half-naked men. That really doesn't do much for you, does it? And I'm like, nope, sure doesn't. And he goes, here you go. He goes, maybe just don't read this in Mr. Bailey's class anymore. And I was like, all right. But it was it was so stupid. I'm like, porn? First of all, it's a political gay magazine. And second of all, if there is anything half naked in it, it's men, and I'm not interested.
And also, I mean, those were in ads.
Yes, exactly.
Come vacation in Key West or wear our underwear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were not,
Oh, God, it was so funny. I remember years later when I became friends with Judy Weeder, who was the editor of The Advocate at the time. I remember telling her that story, and she just laughed and laughed and laughed because it was so stupid.
It was.
But you know what, Derek? Sometimes that's just life. Stupid. Speaking of high school, though, Derek.
Yes, ma'am.
I have this story. I didn't get to share it back when it happened, but I've been sitting on it because it cracks me up. So, Romy graduated high school recently. How
recently? We don't know.
A while back. And let's say a few months ago. And, we threw her a big party. As, that's kind of tradition, right? For when your kid graduates from high school. Well, if you're, for one Taiwanese boy, he got something a little special from his parents, for graduation.
A copy of The Advocate.
Oh God. Ready?
Yeah.
His parents, wanted to give him a graduation gift that would be unforgettable and very different from the typical graduation celebration. So they hired 2 dancers to perform outside their students' school in celebration of his graduation. So there were 2 female dancers, and the young boy was invited to stand between them as they then danced around. They climbed onto the roofs of 2 sport utility vehicles, so basically like Jeeps. And in each of the vehicles, there were stripper poles installed in the bed of the vehicle. They climbed atop the vehicles. They then did their performance on the stripper poles. And, the students at the school, as they watched these 2 young girls dance on the poles, were, of course, filming and taking pictures and so on and so forth. Of course, the students then posted these videos and pictures on their social media. Other parents found out, and some of the parents felt pretty stunned and speechless by what their children saw. Now, these women were not in a state of undress. They were wearing like black booty shorts and crop tops with like thigh high boots. Very, very pretty woman kind of fashion. And, so the school is then, of course, apologizing all over themselves because they're like, oh, we didn't know this was going to happen. Yet it happened outside our school. We're so sorry to all the parents and the students who might have seen this. The parents of the kid are like, whatever. We just want to get our kids something unique. Certainly unique. Do you think these parents were in the wrong, or do you think these parents were kind of fucking awesome?
Well, look, because you went through this yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of pressure, especially for kids just in general. But like to have the wow of the party.
Yep.
I remember when Pie Pants was younger and there was a whole thing about bounce houses.
Oh, God, yes.
Owning a bounce house, renting a bounce house, having the right bounce house. It was a whole thing. And so I think the parents have to deal with this kind of another level of peer pressure.
Yep.
That their kids have this peer pressure, and then it bleeds over to the parent peer pressure of like needing to deliver a wow party, a wow graduation party, a wow birthday party. Oh, so-and-so did cupcakes and Polaroids at her party, so we can't do that at ours. You know what I mean? Like that kind of shit.
Yeah. It's
and
stupid.
So I have to imagine that some parents are just like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I want and let the chips fall where they may. Also, it's a graduation party. What are the other parents going to do? Oh, you can't hang out with that kid anymore? Well, they graduated.
Good.
Who cares?
Yeah. I love the idea of a couple of dancers outside the school to celebrate. I think that's funny as hell. I mean, I'm sure the boy was embarrassed to all get out. Or all of his guy friends are like, dude, you're the coolest kid ever, bro. Like, I can see that too, but I don't know. I wouldn't have cried if my parents had given me a gift like that for graduation. I'd have been all about it.
Girl, if you had belly dancers or strippers on a pole at your graduation party, you would have been ecstatic.
I would have been. I'd have been like, look at this. I'm the fucking bomb diggity.
Meanwhile, your mom would have been like, your graduation party is going to be a quiet reading hour at the library. Everyone wears a turtleneck.
I'm not kidding. My graduation party was an ice cream social. My mom went out and bought like 3 gallons of ice cream, some sprinkles, some whipped cream, and I could invite people over, and everyone could make an ice cream cone or an ice cream bowl, and that was it. That was my whole fucking graduation party.
Girl, I would have eaten that party up. I would have loved that party.
You would have loved that party because you love ice cream. I was like, this is lame. I can't believe this is what my mother
Sure,
wants.
it's lame. But you know what? In retrospect, honestly, what is better than an ice cream social? Nothing.
Nothing.
You know what? I think when I think with my new place, because, I'll have a housewarming thing. And although I don't know, maybe this will air after I've already had my housewarming party. Probably not. But but anyway, I think I'm gonna have an ice cream social party.
It's fun. Like, I will say it was fun.
Adults would actually enjoy an ice cream social.
What adult doesn't like ice cream? My kid. Oh God. This is where you and my daughter are so much alike. It drives me fucking bonkers.
Weird genetic twin.
Every year for Romy's birthday, I don't know if we've talked about this or not. We probably have, but I can't remember. Every year for Romy's birthday, I say, okay, what kind of cake do you want? And every year for probably the last 5 years, it has been the exact same thing. So we have to go to Cold Stone, the ice cream place, and we have to get mint chocolate cake. So it's like chocolate cake with mint ice cream, and then they have usually it has chocolate chips on the outside and some Oreo cookies on the top. It's a whole thing. Every year
this is a solid diet choice.
And by the way, every year this is what Romy wants. But here's the kicker. So you have to get her the big one, which is a decent sized cake. Let's say it's 12 inches, right?
Yeah.
So you have to get her the big cake. On her birthday, Iris and I are allowed a small slice each. And then we are not allowed any more. And then Romy's like, you could have one slice and then I get the rest of it to eat all by myself. And she does. She will eat that entire fucking cake by herself over the course of 3 or 4 days. Every day she'll have a bunch of it and she'll eat it. And we are not even allowed to look at it. We are allowed one tiny little slice. Now, this year, she had friends over for her birthday, so she decided to share with her friends. But again, every friend only got a tiny little slice so that she could preserve as much of the cake as she could for herself.
Respect.
I know. Every time she gets this fucking cake, I think of you, and I'm like, oh my God, this is Derek Hartley's dream.
Yeah, but also the part of you get a sliver because I need to eat this whole cake later.
Yes. It's so ridiculous. And she's so fucking funny about it. And by the way, this year she was pissed because they changed the outside of the cake. Instead of having chocolate chips on the outside of the cake, that had sprinkles this year. And she was furious. She's like, how dare they change my cake and not have the chocolate chips? Oh, she was so mad. And I'm like, I'm sorry. And she's like, Mom, you really fucked this up. And Iris is like, I didn't do anything. I ordered the cake you wanted. This is how it came. What do you want from me? And Romy's like, well, this is all messed up. And she threw a whole fucking fit about it. Oh, it was ridiculous. It was like, Jesus Christ, calm your tits, girl. But you and Romy, when it comes to ice cream, you're exactly the same.
Love it.
Exactly the same. Well, And like Iris, she puts her lock on her pint lock on her Ben and Jerry's ice cream so that Romy won't eat it. Oh my God, Romy gets so mad when she comes across this pint of ice cream and it's got a lock on it. She gets furious. She's like, "How dare you lock up your ice cream?"
Because you want it.
Because Romy wants to eat. Like, you cannot have ice cream in our house and not expect Romy to eat it. If there is even, she's like a bloodhound. She will sniff it out.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so annoying. Because sometimes you just want a little ice cream, right? Like sometimes you're like, oh, a little ice cream after dinner would be nice. And you go to get the little bit of ice cream because you just bought ice cream last week. Or just the other day at the grocery store, you bought some ice cream so you could have some after dinner one night. And then there's none because Romy has eaten it all. You couldn't, I'm telling you, even you, Derek, who loves ice cream, could not compete with the amount of ice cream Romy eats.
Probably. Because I do try to, like when I have ice cream, I use a small bowl. Like I use a small spoon and a small bowl.
Yeah, no, not Romy.
Because if I had a big spoon and a big bowl, or I just ate out of the container, it would all be gone. So I have to create limits on myself because I would eat it. But like right now, I have 3 different flavors of ice cream in this house right now.
You wouldn't if Romy lived there.
Well, no, she would have powered through at least one of them by now.
Oh, no, all of them. I'm telling you, I will buy a half gallon of ice cream.
Yeah.
And I will put it in the fridge. And within 2 days, it's gone.
Well, that's fast.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So great now that she's an adult and you don't have to pay
Buy
for her
ice cream
habit anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Like, sorry, this ice cream's mine. Don't you fucking eat it. You want your own ice cream? Go buy it.
Okay. So first of all, in social media, hilariously, somebody posted on Twitter /X that he said, "My lesbian cousin is pregnant and nobody wants to ask a follow-up question."
Like, how did that happen?
Like, yes. I guess she's not in a relationship or a relationship that they know about. So now it's like, where'd that baby come from? Now, obviously you're a lesbian.
Right.
Like, would you just ask flat out, like, so what's with the baby?
Yeah, I would ask, say, oh, how'd you go about conceiving your family? Like, I don't think that's an odd question. People used to ask me that all the time. Actually, even today, people are like, so which of you is the biological mom? I get that question all the time by people who like have met us for the first time or whatever.
Is it because Pie Pants is like a full human person taller than both of you put together?
Well,
and they're like,
yes.
Who's the mom here?
Yeah.
Is it a giraffe?
People just want to know like who carried her or how we went about our, creating our family, which is
People
fine.
are nosy.
Oh yeah, but I don't mind. I'm like, oh yeah, we used the sperm donor I carried, blah blah blah, and they're like, oh okay. Like people just are curious. So yeah, I'd have no problem asking. Like if all of a sudden one of my lesbian friends was pregnant, I might be like, so how'd you go about making that happen? Did you did you use a reproductive endocrinologist? Did you have a known donor, unknown donor? Because I'm curious. I'd ask. I'd have no problems asking. Because, the reality is LGBTQ families are comprised in a lot of different ways. Sometimes you come about your family through the foster care system. Sometimes you adopt. Sometimes you use a reproductive endocrinologist, a sperm donor, a known donor. Like there's so many different ways. Sometimes some women just go out and have sex with a random guy and hope they get knocked up. Like there's so many ways that people go about doing it.
If somebody is pregnant through the foster care system, now that's a story.
Now that is a story. But the point is, there's a lot of different ways that LGBTQ families are comprised. We just had the guests recently, a while back on our show from the hosts of the Two Mom Edit. They talk about how they came about creating their family. The Queer Family Podcast. This is literally what that entire podcast is about, is how queer people come up with making and creating their families. And we all have different methods and, none is right or wrong. It's just how we go about doing it. So yeah, I would not have any problem asking questions. And she probably wants to tell them because it's kind of an exciting, it can be an exciting process. Like when I will say when Iris and I were planning our family, the process of like shopping for sperm donor and all of that kind of stuff was really fun. Like it was a really cool experience. Even the part where like I was going to the reproductive endocrinologist and like doing all these appointments, it was a wild, like there was a lot of wild experiences in there, unexpected things that were happening that I was not prepared for, things I was prepared for. Like it was a lot. I would have loved to be able to talk about it. Because it was like with friends or family, because it was really interesting.
Well, in the UK, recently they announced that they have created 8 babies through IVF with a twist.
Okay.
These babies have 3 parents.
Oh, okay. 3. Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
Who are
Now,
the 3?
I think that this is of particular interest to gays and lesbians having kids because, but what it's being used for now is editing out genetic disease traits.
Okay.
Because sometimes people have like inherited genetic traits that can cause the fetus to die, can cause severe birth defects, can cause long-time health issues, whatever else.
Right.
And this is somewhat controversial of editing these genes out.
Gene
but
editing.
a lot of people who carry these genes, who want to have kids, but who also don't want, like, you know, a 50-50 chance of their child dying before the age of 10 or whatever. Like, so I understand.
So could it be used in the case of like, let's say little people, right? Because like some little people can have normal sized children and some little people have little people sized children, right? So in a case like that, could they edit out the little people gene so that little people could still have children, but they would have normal sized children?
Yes, but I think but then that becomes a controversy because it's one thing to edit out a disease trait that will dramatically end your life, shorten your life, or not allow your baby to be born, or have them born in terrible pain for their whole life. Like, it's very different to do something like that versus something like, oh, but I want to make sure, because, I have blue eyes, my wife has brown eyes. I want to make sure our baby has blue eyes. Or I want to make sure our baby has brown eyes. Like, editing out, now you're doing selective editing. Right. Which, if you think about, like, height is a selective editing thing. Sure. Because, a little person can live a perfectly wonderful life. Normal life, yes. Yes. I mean, are they getting things easily off of top shelves? No. But neither are Romaine and Iris. So, what are you going to do? So there are some things where it's like, well, how much of this is are you doing this for some kind of
aren't we already doing that? Because, like, think about it. So, like, my friends, Tom and Sarah, who live across the street, they have conceived all of their children through IVF. Because she has a medical condition that makes it hard for them to get pregnant naturally. So they have all these embryos on ice, and in the previous attempts at IVF they've done, they were able to choose the gender of the embryos that they implanted. So they have 3 boys, and they still have 1 girl embryo on ice. And I remember at the last time when they were trying to choose their embryo, they were trying to decide between, did they want another boy or did they want to give the girl embryo a chance? And they end up ultimately choosing the boy because they had 2 other boys, and they're like, what's 1 more boy? And they're like, at least we don't have to buy all new clothes. But they wanted another boy. So how is that any different? Isn't that already selective choosing?
Yes, but that's also a concern overall because most people would prefer to have a boy than a girl. And so what if you get into a situation where people can choose the gender of their child and then you have a population that is 70% boys? I
mean, that could happen.
It could happen. And then the next thing you know, it's a handmaid's tale because the 30% of women that we have are forced to have babies because there's not enough women to go around. I mean, we already have this problem where men have this loneliness epidemic and women are the majority population. Like, I can't even imagine a situation where men were the majority population. Like, ooh, talk about a real loneliness epidemic. But where it's interesting for gay people is that there's definitely an opportunity through this genetic editing to put the genes of a male partner into an egg from an egg donor. Right. And have two gay men have
Genetically have a baby.
that
Yeah.
share their genes.
I gotta be honest. If I were redoing this, if I were doing pregnancy again, knowing what I know, like knowing that Iris was never going to have a baby, I probably would have harvested eggs from Iris, and I probably would have had a second child using Iris's eggs. Because I love the idea of an Iris baby. I hate that we don't have an Iris baby. Like, I wish I had a baby Iris.
Sure.
The way that, like, Romy is definitely a baby Romaine. Like, there's no question whose child that fucking is. Oh, she's just a mini me. I would love to have a mini Iris. I think having a mini Iris would be so fun.
Great. You'd have somebody else around the house who doesn't want to do anything.
Yes. No, but I love what like a dork Iris is, and I think like a mini Iris. Like I would hope that it would have like those same little dorky Iris, like the grin, like Iris's shit-eating grin. Like, oh God, I would have loved to have seen Iris's shit-eating grin on a kid. Like I just would have loved it. But alas, I didn't get that.
Nope, because those eggs are
dust and salmonella now.
Fried up.
Yeah, that's just the way it is.
Sitting in the skillet.
Yeah, her eggs are toast. No guts coming out of them. Woo,
That's a real shame. Well, speaking of
nice.
toast,
Yeah.
Today's show is also toast.
Oh yeah, it is over, isn't it?
It really is.
Well.
But look, we've had some good times here, ladies.
Yeah, we really have. It's been nice. I've enjoyed this show, Derek. I'm glad we did it.
As have I. So I hope you've enjoyed it too. We'll be back live again someday.
Eventually. I don't know when. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe not. Who could say?
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, week, month, or year.
Yeah. Bye, bitches. Derek, we have always had the very best listeners. They took a leap of faith with us when we relaunched the show, and they've been with us ever since.
We love our listeners, which is why we spent the last 8 years working and developing the best listening experience that we can, and finally, we have it.
You've got to be talking about the new DNR Cast app.
I am.
But it isn't just about the DNR Cast app and all of its amazing features, which are incredible. We have also been curating some of the very best LGBTQ plus content for our listeners to enjoy.
And the best way to do that is with a DNR Plus subscription. It gives you access to the entire network of DNR shows and full access to all the features in the DNR Cast app.
Which is to say, longtime listeners, it is time for an upgrade. Get the best listening experience and the best content by upgrading to a DNR Plus subscription at dnrstudios.com.
It's a leap of faith worth taking.